Well, thanks a lot for coming along today.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. I've seen this on the telly. I'm very excited. I feel like I should be proposing something controversial so we can have a debate.
Well, there's plenty of time for that. Plenty of time. So, as I mentioned at the start of my introduction, you've taken on a huge range of different projects, both as an actor and as a writer. What is it that you look for when you're deciding which project you take on? You do so much.
Cash and hot boys. Those have been my criteria since I started. Yes, mostly that. It's sort of, it depends really. I mean, I generate an awful lot of stuff myself, so that's obviously starting point of so much sort of passion projects. The thing I'm just doing at the moment, which I'll come on to later, very much something I'm thrilled to be doing, but I was actually asked by the BBC to do it. So there's sometimes it's an approach. I get a lot of emails saying, would you be interested in this? My rule for that is if they haven't spelled my name correctly, I don't reply. Because I think, well, if you're that bothered, you might have looked up how to spell Gatiss. But I don't know. I would say probably enthusiasm is the main thing. Something like Sherlock, obviously, was a boyhood obsession of mine and Stephen's. Doctor Who's always been my favourite show. So some things just are obvious, and other things are a less obvious fit, I suppose.
Do you ever worry about taking on too much?
Constantly. I shouldn't be here. I've cancelled this twice. Yes, I do genuinely. It's a funny thing, really. I remember a few years ago, sometimes it's a bit like queuing up buses. There were two things I'd made 2 years before and something I'd just made, and they were all on at the same Christmas. And I thought, oh God, this looks like I'm totally ubiquitous. And I did worry about it, but then I actually thought it sort of raised my profile. I really don't know what the answer is. All I can say is, you're a long time dead.
Mm-hmm. So your career probably kicked off with League of Gentlemen, and that was a hugely exciting project. Recently, you said that you're going to be getting back together for a reunion episode of Special in 2019-2020. What was that project like?
I said it was an anniversary. I didn't say which one. Right. It's the 50th anniversary. Yes, we are. We have had several meetings. We are meeting up soon. We're hoping to shoot it this year. That's the plan. We've got some good ideas, I think. But it's funny. We never officially split up. We just stopped doing it. So we've all been doing lots of different things. So it feels like a nice time to do it. But it's not we've got anniversaries we can sort of lasso it around, but it doesn't actually have to be tied to anything like that. But I'm very excited. Stephen, Reece and I met up to do a tribute program for Victoria Wood the other day, and we had such a marvellous time. We had to go off and shoot things and then just come back to the room. We just laughed all day long, which is how it always used to be. So very excited about that, I have to say.
Great. So kind of going back, to early on in your career, you just mentioned now, you're a real avid fan of Doctor Who. You watched that a lot as a child. You grew up opposite a psychiatric hospital.
Yes.
What else inspired you, as a child to think, I really want to write, I really want to, get involved with this sort of stuff?
Well, other writers, other actors, seeing things on the telly. I'm a big fan of I suppose kind of behind the scenes programs, although they're kind of ubiquitous now. There was a time when I was a child, they were very rare. They'd be, I'd get more excited about watching the making of Superman on Bank Holiday Monday than about the film itself, because those things were really unusual to see how effects were done or how writers worked or actors preparing stuff like that. So it's sort of everywhere now, but I've always liked that sort of thing. And with Doctor Who, there was this marvellous book called The Making of Doctor Who, and I remember I used to save up my pocket money to buy a novelisation of a Doctor Who story. And then there was this book about the making of the show, which was more expensive. It was 60p. And I had to make a decision whether to buy that or one of the stories. And I never regretted it, because it was where I found out really how the show was born and how it was put together. And it kind of sparked a lot of interest for me in the mechanics of television and film,
Yeah. With all the technological developments we've had over the past decades, being behind the scenes and watching how films, TV programs are put together, do you find it's more exciting now, or was it more exciting when you were still a child?
I mean, it's hard. I never get blasé at all, but obviously you do get used to it. The project I've just done, which is a series of monologues for the BBC, which I've directed and curated, I got 5 new writers into it because the slots are very rare these days for that kind of thing. It just doesn't happen. So I got 5 writers who'd never written for TV before. And one of the most joyous things about it was each day they came in, they were so moved by seeing their thing being done for the first time. And also just the kind of, a couple of them were absolutely wide-eyed. One of my friends said, I thought it would just be you, the camera, and the actor. And there's always more people than you think involved. But it really reminded me of how marvelous it is, that feeling, and how you should never take it for granted, because it is an extraordinary privilege to see your stuff translated into action like that.
This is Quiz, the
Yes.
series of monologues for the BBC. What advice do you have? You've got writers here who've never written for television before. What do you say to them when they're taking on their...
Leave it all to me. I always say the same thing, which is just keep at it. It's life and writing is too specific to give that. All you can say is to be encouraging, I think, and stick at it. There are so many people who've never really got past it. The first page, and writing is one of the easiest things to do, in the sense that there's nobody stopping you. If you want to be a doctor, it's hard to just kind of bumble your way into it. If you want to be a marathon runner, you can put on a pair of shoes and start to run. If you want to write, you can pick up a pen and a piece of paper, and you can just have a go. And I think it's amazing how many people are stuck at that first bit, because there's a voice on their shoulder telling them it's no good, and you've got to get rid of that. And then when you've got something you think you're happy with, show it to someone whose opinion you trust and take it from there. But it's amazing, it's crippling, that little voice telling you you're not good enough, which you live with all your life, of course. But as I say, writing is something you can at least have a go. And the important thing is to get past page 1.
Mm-hmm. Now,
page 2 is always terrible.
Now, somebody you've written with a lot is Stephen Moffat.
Whatever happened to him?
Yeah, he was here 2 terms ago. Actually. Yeah, and the two of you have worked on Sherlock together, Doctor Who as well. How does it work when you're collaborating with another big character and there are 2 of you in the room? Obviously,
have you
bounce
seen
off
the
with
naked wrestling scene in Women in Love?
No.
It's nothing like that. Well, with Sherlock, it's a very specific thing, because we created it together, this version, and we brainstorm what the episodes are going to be in sort of general terms, and we pick the stories we might want to do, and then we kind of go off and do that, and then we come back together and we work across all 3 episodes in that way. It's been amazing, really, experience. It's so much fun and very hard work, but also just the global reach of the show has been amazing, really. So I never cease to be grateful and thrilled, because it's sort of, pointing people back towards Conan Doyle through a new version is all I could ever have hoped for, really.
Did the two of you ever begin to feel the pressure? After the first series, there were hundreds of different blogs, thousands of tweets after every episode. Did you ever, really feel there's this huge expectation for the next series? What are we going to do? Where are we going to go next?
You can't ignore it, but it's folly to sort of to put it at the forefront of your mind, because it's like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, isn't it? You can't measure something properly. By the act of measuring, you disturb it. So if you start to do that to your own show, then you're second guessing so many things. It's kind of mad. So I think you just have to kind of screen it out and just do the show you want to do, and hopefully people like it. But it's sometimes hard. I mean, especially after the second series, when we did take account of the worldwide theories about how Sherlock had faked his death. but that we made a positive of it by having lots of fake openings, you know.
Great. And, Doctor Who is going to be a bit different now after Stephen's departure. Is it still going to be something you're going to be working on really keenly? Or?
I don't know. I feel like I'm ignoring this side of the room. I'm going to talk to you. No, ignore Michael. I really don't know. Talking about that book, The Making of Doctor Who, I sort of feel like I'm living inside the pages of it, because so much of that book was about, it would talk about how it was when John Pertwee left the show or Tom Baker had joined the show and that sort of thing. And it's weird. I'm sort of living that now. You know, my friends and colleagues I've been working with for years mostly are departing, and you realize that all that stuff which looks like a kind of legend is just people's lives and their jobs, and it's very hard to let go and very hard for new people to come on board, etc. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I've been doing it for 12 years, so I've written for 4 Doctors, 10 stories including Invention, Space and Time, so it's quite, if it's the end, then I'd be perfectly content. But the moment has been prepared for.
Do you find it difficult working and moving through different teams? You know, you'll be on production in one place, move to writing for something else, hopping around different places. Do you find it difficult adjusting quite short time frames?
I mean, one of the strange things is how familiar everything is. One of the worst things I ever did was I was filming something, and the third assistant was this lad, and I did 2 days on it, and I moved to something else, and he was also in that, and I didn't recognize him. I felt so bad. I got out of the car, went hi, I felt terrible. But people, you go from job to job, and the caravans and the teams, and they can be very, very familiar. When I was first in Doctor Who, I remember it took ages for it to kind of kick in, because everything about it was so familiar. Not just the fact that I knew everybody involved, and David Tennant's an old friend of mine, etc., but it was because the actual paraphernalia of making the show. I suppose in a way you sort of think you're going to be in an old episode. I remember that when the TARDIS was first revealed, I was expecting, we had a big press day, and we were all lifted the curtain up, and there was Chris Eccleston's TARDIS, and it was like, I sort of didn't get the jolt I expected because it was a new TARDIS. I thought, oh no, it's not the same one. So it's a sort of ongoing battle with nostalgia we all have, I suppose.
Yeah. So one of these big projects is Game of Thrones, and you're due to return in the next season. This is a huge, complex project, and there's so many different moving parts. How does it feel to be acting and being kept in the dark about a lot of what else is going on, instead of when you're a writer and having oversight of exactly everything?
It's a huge relief. I'm a tiny cog in this machine. I was very thrilled to be asked to do it, but I mean, I think I've just done 2 more episodes, so I've done 4 in total. I'm still not dead, which I gather is a great plus. But I mean, it's great. If people ask me for secrets, I haven't a clue. So I can't even lie. I don't even have to lie this time. I'm so used to lying. I don't have to bother, because I don't have a clue what they've got planned or anything. When I did the second episode in Croatia, and I had dinner with Dan and David, the showrunners, and I pitched them my idea that Tycho Nestoris, my character, should be the last one alive in the whole show. Because who else would survive but the bank? And they just went, kill him.
Great, but it's a lot of fun. You just turn up, get paid, nice setting.
It's lovely, and it's nice to have an occasional job in a show that I don't have a huge emotional stake in, if you know what I mean. It's just great fun, and it's so huge and monumental. Just weird to be part of something so enormous.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so we were talking about this earlier. Your new exciting project is Queers, which you're curating, and this chronicles LGBT and kind of gay histories and experiences in the UK.
Well, it's not. I'm glad you brought it up. Actually, this is a very difficult thing to get a grip on. You can't. there was a press release which used LGBT because
that's where I got it from. Yeah,
because that's what's sort of expected. But the thing is, it's about the 50th anniversary of the partial decriminalisation of male homosexuality in this country. So it's largely the male perspective, but it's very difficult these days to just use the word gay because it feels exclusionary. But that's what it is. So there are some non-male stories, but it's not trying to do everything, and because it's to do with a specific anniversary. So that's what I've been trying to make clear. The problem is it's very hard these days to do something like that without people expecting it to tick every single box, but you simply can't. I had to fight to do 8 of them instead of 6. So just trying to do the breadth of stories I've been able to cover was quite difficult. But equally, I mean, hopefully there should be many more series that covers everything.
Yeah. Do you feel that you're subject to box ticking when you're writing now, whether it's for Sherlock or Quiz, that there's certain images or certain roles that you have to have people in, or you can't have certain things going on?
Well, to me, it's more about a proper sensitivity more than any kind of, there's no one standing over you like that. I mean, you just have to try and be better at it. Interesting things happen with my new Doctor Who, which is on Saturday night, which is where the Victorians have got to Mars, for reasons which become clear. And one of the soldiers is played by a brilliant young black actor. And I said, this is a very difficult email to send, but I don't know if we can do this, because these are soldiers from the South African War. They've just been fighting the Zulus. There weren't any black soldiers in Queen Victoria's army. So, but obviously you're trying all the time to be more representational, to make everything less, homogeneously white. It's really, but then because the argument is, but it's Doctor Who, so it's obviously already a strange and different world where there's from the time the show came back, Russell T Davies is very, very particular about making sure it's sort of colourblind casting. But I thought, is this a specific example where it's slightly? I didn't know what the answer was, but then I did a lot of research and found that there was a black soldier in Queen Victoria's army. And I got really slightly obsessed with this. I thought, this is a great story. This boy, when he was 18 months old, was rescued by the Durham Light Infantry. And they made him their mascot. They called him Jimmy Durham. And he became an enlisted officer by special dispensation of Queen Victoria. And retired to the northeast, married a white girl, and his descendants still live there. It's an amazing story. Someone should do it. And so I put all this stuff in as like sort of background, all of which has gone for time. But it's left an imprint, I suppose. But I thought that was a very interesting dilemma in terms of there are shows where obviously you can be immediately more diverse, and so you should be, and also things where maybe there's a specific reason why it's slightly more problematic. Mm.
Is that something you do frequently then, digging a bit deeper behind the storyline, looking at the history, doing some research yourself?
I love doing research for anything, and I love the excuse of it, especially if it's something that's a new area or something I don't know much about. But I also, one of my particular favourite things is finding what I call, it's the little story in the shadow of the big one. I did a thing a few years ago about Captain Scott, about this. It's an extraordinary thing called The Worst Journey in the World, this book about an expedition that took place within Scott's expedition. It is in itself quite famous, but it's not as famous as Scott. And if you see any huge event or anything like that, you should dig around it, because there's probably a new way into it. It's a bit like Wolf Hall. Doing that very familiar story from the point of view of Thomas Cromwell makes it all come up fresh again. I think there's a lot to be said for that. I was just in America last week, and I was watching this brilliant documentary on CNN about the Kennedy assassination, because it's Kennedy's centenary. And one of the amazing things about American television is they've never destroyed anything. They've got everything. And they've got all the news coverage from the assassination. And watching it in real time, in almost almost hyper-real black and white. It's like looking through a telescope back into the past. It was extraordinary. But one thing leapt out to me as a brilliant potential, I shouldn't tell anyone of this, because was Lee Harvey Oswald, who shot Kennedy, also shot a policeman. No one remembers that. And he shot a policeman, and then he fled into a movie theatre, and that's where he was arrested. Now, that policeman was buried on the same day as Kennedy, and they've got the footage from the funeral. And also, Oswald was buried on the same day as Kennedy. And I watched this footage of his hole-in-the-wall funeral, and the flowers slide off the coffin, and the pallbearers are all reporters because no one would carry the coffin. And I thought, what a story this is. You've got this massive thing, the state funeral of the president, the funeral of the policeman, and the funeral of the assassin, all on the same day. Somebody do something with that. I'd love to see it. It's great though, isn't it? So you see what I mean? In the shadow of this enormous story, there's some little thing which is a new way into it.
Mm-hmm. So you might not have time to take that on, but is there anything else at the moment that you really do want to make time to do, or you're hoping to do over the next year or two?
Go on holiday.
Go on holiday?
Well, there's loads of things I'd love to do. I've always wanted to do A Christmas Carol. It's my favourite story. I'd love to do more ghost stories, particularly Christmas ghost stories, mostly Christmas things. I'd like to be Father Christmas.
Lots of Christmas specials slots.
There's Christmas specials for things I'd like to do, yeah.
Great. Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing some of that. Let's take a few questions from the audience now. So if you have a question, then please do put your hands up. Wait for the microphone to reach you as well before asking your question. Do you want to pick your first victim?
Oh, someone over here from this ignored side. Gentleman there.
Hi there. Sort of topical question considering what's coming up on Thursday, but which way would the Doctor, Mycroft and Sherlock vote in the general election?
Interesting. The Doctor doesn't vote. He's not a registered alien. He's above party politics. The Doctor would vote for the most human person. So I know who that is. Mycroft would definitely vote Tory. Sherlock would call into question the notion of an election.
Well, yeah, yes. there you've got your endorsements for...
Hi, thank you very much for coming to talk, and I think all of us Whovians are looking forward to your episode on Saturday.
Thank you. I
was just wondering, a lot of us were thinking when Stephen Moffat stood down last year that you would be sort of a shoo-in for the next showrunner because you've been involved with New Who for so long. So I was just wondering really, were you offered the chance to be the next showrunner alongside people like Chris Chibnall? And if you had become the next showrunner, what sort of way would you take the Doctor and his adventures if you had become the showrunner?
I was offered... to be honest, the job of showrunning Doctor Who, I think, is probably the hardest job in television. I've seen it up close. Stephen was only 19 when he started, and it's taken a terrible toll on him. It's sort of, honestly, it has an obvious huge appeal, but equally, it's just so completely all-consuming. I act and I write, and I couldn't do both. I couldn't do it if I did that. I wasn't offered it, but it's a sort of it's such a poison chalice. It's like the England managership, I imagine, knowing nothing about football. There is so much expectation, such a weight of expectation. Millions of people who think they can do it better than you. It's a sort of relief not to be asked, to be honest. However, if I had been in charge, I would have cancelled it immediately, just out of spite. No, I don't know. I mean, I would never have any huge plan. There are things I'd still like to do as a writer, but I don't know, I think it's a thrilling notion to be, to cast the Doctor and to all those things that come with it. And I wish Chris all the luck in the world. It's a very exciting time. It's also it's difficult. You say goodbye to something. It's always the end of a chapter. I'm very sad Peter's going. I'm sure Stephen will find it a terrible wrench. I mean, how can you not after all these years? But equally, it's the freshness and the renewal, the regeneration, if you were, is exactly what's made the show what it is. And if they, if William Hartnell, I think, had been well enough, Doctor Who might have run for 5 years and then come off, which is a strange thought, isn't it? That actually, maybe somehow in its DNA there is this perpetual renewal, and I'm very excited about watching it without knowing anything at all. She's off.
Bye.
Bye. I was just at Universal Studios last week doing all the rides, and this weird thing happened where every show we went to, after 5 minutes, 2 Japanese people would walk out. Every single time. It's like, what is this? Something I don't know. Hello.
You were obviously one of the first writers of the brand new reboot of the show, or not really a reboot, but you'd obviously been involved with the show a bit before in the 90s and the early noughties with the books like The Last of the Gadarene. You'd done bits with Big Finish. What was it like being part of the select few of 4 or 5 writers that got to be part of that first series, and what was the atmosphere like as it had been off for so long and it had sort of like died on a whim during the 80s? How was it like to bring it back? Was it really, really nerve-wracking?
It's very Who-centric, this.
Yeah.
This is the Oxford Whoonian. I'll never say that again. Well, it was a privilege and a thrill, obviously. It was the best. Russell rang me up Christmas 2003, and it's all about Christmas, isn't it? It's the best present I've ever had, and it was amazing. I never thought it would come back. Lots of people kept the torch burning in the dark times, the time of chaos, and so it was. I couldn't quite believe it still. And I remember Steve Moffat and Paul Cornell and Rob Shearman and I going to an Indian restaurant in Hammersmith called the Chula, which then became something in an episode, didn't it? And we were just sort of pinching ourselves, really. And then Russell took us out for a Chinese, and it just seemed unbelievable, really. But looking back at it now, it's this is quite a long time now. It was just terribly exciting, but also I remember thinking, Russell's boldness is exactly what made it work. They could have focus grouped it to death. And there was an earlier attempt, I think Russell was asked to bring back Doctor Who for a Millennium special where the Doctor fights the Millennium Bug. And he just said no. But when they believed in him and thought, looking back on it now, it's so fascinating. They wanted the BBC wanted the Daleks in episode 1, and he said no. If we do it halfway through, then we get another first night and things like that. It's very, very well constructed, that first season. No alien planets because of the fear of wobbly sets and everything. And Chris Eccleston's cast, I think he's a marvelous Doctor, and the sort of solidity of having someone like Chris rather than someone who might be more obvious. It sort of sent a message, I think. Yeah, it was amazing. Still amazing. Yes, sir.
Better not be Doctor Who related.
Hello, thank you very much. This isn't about Doctor Who, I'm afraid. I was just thinking, with the general election coming up, I was thinking back to Coalition and how brilliant it was. And I was just wondering what it was kind of like to play Lord Mandelson and be able to play around the idea of the Prince of Darkness and that sort of character.
This is not supposed to be about Doctor Who. Oh, thank you. Well, it was brilliant. Peter Mandelson I find endlessly fascinating. He's the direct inspiration for Mycroft Holmes, and I played him in this thing a few years ago about the coalition. And everything about that now seems like a lost golden age of stability. I really miss the coalition. What a good idea. People are always saying, why don't people just stop arguing and actually work together? And it was an arranged marriage, but actually I think it kind of worked now. I think we should do more of them. And Mandelson fascinated me because he had this sort of Indian summer where he was brought in to manage Gordon Brown's campaign with no expectation that it would be anything other than managing a disaster. And then Labour did a lot better than expected. So he sort of goes into action, and it's like, oh, I'm good in a crisis. I watched so many wonderful things about him. There's this brilliant documentary called The Real PM, and tried to get he has a face like a banana, and it's immediately supercilious kind of quality, but it's very princely and very camp, you know. And there's this brilliant bit where two revealing things. He's eating a yogurt and talking to the interviewer, and he just drops some in his tie, and he goes, and someone takes it from him. And it's the absolutely king-like expectation of that. Reece knows what I'm talking about. I thought that was very revealing. And then the interviewer says, why aren't you Prime Minister? Why aren't you leader of the Labour Party, Peter? And of course he should say, oh, please, no, it's not for me. I'd never want that. But he goes, well, Tony worked very hard, and you see they were in Parliament a lot longer than I was, and then it was Gordon's turn. And he goes through this list of things. You think, you've thought about this for years. So it was great. And then James Graham, who wrote it, got an email from him saying how much he'd enjoyed it. He said, despite my somewhat sinister appearance.
Are there any other politicians or other, real-life characters you'd want to play?
Theresa May. But I think it's too early for a remake of Nosferatu.
Great. Right, let's have another question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a massive fan. I thought the season finale of Sherlock was just amazing, I want to say. So with the rise of social media platforms like Twitter, it's become much easier for consumers to get in contact with the creators of shows they love.
Hateful, isn't it?
So, well, as a creator yourself, I wondered how you felt about this, whether you think it's kind of a force for good when it comes to shows of having access to that kind of constant feedback, or whether you think it can become a bit overwhelming and unhelpful. And also, how do you think you would have taken advantage of that opportunity as a fan yourself growing up?
It's a very good question. I think it's a bit of both. As with everything to do with the internet, it's a sort of mixed blessing. I think in terms of instant reaction, it's very negative, generally, because it makes people everything is too quick. Everything is consumed instantly. So something you've worked on for years, months and years, is like gone in 90 minutes, like next. And there's a sort of expectation of that, which I think makes everybody slightly overstimulated. But in terms of feedback, I mean, it's only there if you choose to look at it. I mean, it's really like listening to the door, isn't it? If you don't want to hear anything bad about yourself, don't do it. I remember David Tennant telling me when he was cast as the Doctor, he went online straight away to see what people were saying. And he was about 5 comments down going, oh, Jesus Christ. And he never looked again, which is very wise, So, I don't know, it's funny. I nearly leave Twitter about 5 times a day because I think I should be doing something better with my life. But when it's fun, it's a lot of fun. And it's amazing, puts you in touch with people. This extraordinary thing happened to me. I was staying with my friend in Whitley Bay, which is near where I'm from, a few years ago. And I just tweeted, the last time I was in Whitley Bay was to see Spandau Ballet at Whitley Bay Ice Rink, 1981. Immediately, I get a tweet from Gary Kemp from Spandau Ballet going, I remember that one. It's like, this is so strange. I mean, and that's inconceivable. That's the stuff of the year 2000, as we used to say. So if I'd had anything like that at the time, I probably would have been trying to, get in touch with the producer of Doctor Who and tell him what I thought he was doing wrong, which is what people generally do. I don't know. I think it's a mixed blessing. I think the internet will destroy us all. Not to be hyperbolic about it, but I do worry a great deal about the way that fake news goes viral. That it wouldn't take much for someone to press a button because of a story that's gone around the world. What was that wonderful expression? A lie is twice around the world before the truth has got its boots on. And it's increasingly, because we're all so expectant of news instantly, it wouldn't take much for something to go wrong like that. I'm frightened. Yes, gentleman in the yellow t-shirt.
Also a big fan of Sherlock. I was just wondering if there was anything about the show that you perhaps regretted or would have done differently in any of the episodes.
Well, there's always things you want to do differently, I suppose. Maybe we shouldn't have killed Moriarty off in the second season, because I remember going to the Edinburgh TV Festival with Andrew Scott, and he was, at the end he said, I'm a bit sad really because it's all over now, I thought. And he's left the show like 5 times now. But then, that was the point, is telling 90-minute stories, they're so big and film length, the stakes have to be big, so I'm not sure really. Give me 20 years to decide. By which time there'll be a 5th season. Let's go right to the back. Yes, sir.
So, big fan. So, when you decided to create the show Sherlock, how early on did you know that you would have an acting role within it, and why Mycroft?
Well, Steve and I came up with the idea together, so that was just from the beginning we were going to run it. As I say, it was originally 6-hour-long episodes, and then we got the commission. We were actually at a Doctor Who read-through when the call came through saying they'll commission it today if you do 3 90s, and we went, yes. So that's how it happened. And then Mycroft came about weirdly through Peter Mandelson. I auditioned to play him for another thing about Mo Mowlam, and we'd already talked about Mycroft being a kind of Mandelsonian character. And it was Steve Thompson, the other writer on the show, who said, you should play him. And I went, no, I couldn't possibly. going back to Peter Mandelson. And that's how it came about. And then we had this idea that if we presented Mycroft as an arch baddie, people would think it was Moriarty, which worked for the first episode. Which is why I'm not credited in any of the episodes in the first season, because we couldn't give anything away. Yeah. Yes. A blue shirt gentleman, is that blue there? Yes. It's like question time, isn't it?
Sorry, a question not about Sherlock or Doctor Who. In terms of The League of Gentlemen, which is an incredibly weird and surreal show, I was wondering sort of how does the creative process work for some of those characters? Because, I mean, it's basically mental, some of the people there. Remarkably, a lot of them were based on real people to a greater or lesser extent. It was, it's just stuff that made us laugh. We never had an agenda, that there was a kind of gap for comedy, horror or anything. We just did the stuff that made us laugh. I mean, we were talking originally about the anniversary one, whatever anniversary it is. I said that we should do a mockumentary where we just sit in a room going through all our old sketches, just going, can't do that anymore, can't do that. So it was really that was the process. It was just funny stuff. And some of it, I mean, like Papa Lazarou is based on a real event.
or several real events kind of pushed together. I think Jonathan Miller said, there's nothing funnier than a private joke made public. And that's what that is. I mean, it's so ridiculously esoteric, and yet it became this big catchphrasey thing. First of all, when Reece was little, his parents were out, and some people came to the door trying to sell him something. And he tried to shut the door, and the man put his foot in it, and he said, "My wife would like to use your toilet." And this woman just nipped into his house. He was so terrified. That was one thing. And then we used to have a landlord, a Greek landlord called Peter Papalazarou. And because Steve Pemberton had signed the lease, he was the only person he would ever speak to, even if other people were on the phone. And he had that voice. He used to ring up and say, "Hello, Steve." And Reece would say, "No, it's Reece." "Okay, Steve." "Oh, this is just a saga." So somehow or other that became this creature. So it's just bits and pieces, really. Yes. Yes.
Hi, sorry, it's a Who question, but we haven't had one in a while. So I was just wondering, out of the 4 Doctors, who is your favourite to write for in terms of personalities, like storylines, and why? So.
Can't choose, not allowed. Splendid chaps, all of them. Well, I've loved it all. I mean, it's interesting. Chris Eccleston was in the League of Gentlemen, oddly enough, so I knew him a little bit before he started. David I've known for a long time. Matt I didn't know, but got to know well. Peter I've known a bit off and on before the show. So it's always it's the same challenge but different. You know, you get an actor's voice into your head, you start to look at footage of what's already been shot or scripts, and then you piece it together like that. But I mean, that's the joy of it. They're all so different. The only thing I would say straight off the bat is when I was writing my first one for Peter Capaldi, I knew it was going to be him, but in terms of how he was going to play it, I sort of wrote it for a grumpy Tom Baker, because I knew he was going to be less approachable and less obviously human, you know. So I remember doing that. But they're all marvelous. Yes, let's go this side. So I can see, it's not your hand, but I can see a hand. Yes, whoever that is. Oh, it's you, yeah. Lady there, with the scarf on.
Thank you.
Is that the time?
I had the absolute pleasure of seeing you in 3 days in the country at the National, and I was wondering how you found the transition to working on the stage, and whether it's something you'd like to do more of.
Thank you. I got a text from Patrick Marber this morning, who wrote and directed that, just the word summer, because there was a bit in the play where I would come on in a rainstorm, and we started doing the play in the middle of the summer, and it was like this, and it got a huge laugh just because it's English. And as the show went on and we got into autumn, the laugh just died because it was. It's really interesting that. I loved it. Thank you. And I'd love to do more theatre. I'm doing a play next year. I don't know about the rest of this year, but I did a play early this year, Boys in the Band, and the transition it's just totally same but different. What I love about doing a play is getting into a room with lots of new people and having the time to spend exploring the characters and stuff like that. But equally, I do sometimes get a bit impatient because I'm used to TV, that things can take a long time. And there are certain jobs I have actually turned down because the rehearsal period is too long. And I just find, you know, there was a particular job, I got an email about it recently, it said, it's 11 weeks rehearsal and then 2 weeks tech. I thought, I would go out of my mind. Absolutely, there's nothing on earth, unless you're doing 4 plays at the same time, nothing can justify 11 weeks rehearsal for anything. So those are the criteria I have when I choose things. Yes. Yes, sir. I could just see arms. I don't know who they belong to.
Cheers. So it's a Sherlock question this time. I found myself watching the pilot episode the other day instead of studying, but so I was just wondering, because that's only an hour long, so I was wondering what your decisions were for changing the actual episodes to an hour and a half and having less of them instead of more 1 hour episodes.
Fewer of them. Well, it's just I'd already written episode 2, which was the story of the lost Vermeer painting, which is in The Great Game. That was the whole episode. So what instantly happened with doing the 90s was everything kind of got quicker, but I think hugely to the benefit to the show. You know, it also makes Sherlock look cleverer because his speed of thought is a lot quicker. But I suppose that the big decisions were a 90-minute format absolutely eats up story, and it's a beast you have to keep feeding. But what we discovered early on was that people loved the big talky scenes. I remember, because we shot the Great Game first, and there's a 12-page scene of them in Baker Street, which came out about 10 or 12 minutes long, and we were really worried. We thought, will this sustain? And then when it went out, it's what people like the best, actually. It's just the interaction between the characters. So that was a big lesson. And I don't know if we would have been able to do that if it was a 60. We probably have felt the need to get on with it. And yet the show has a reputation for being sort of frenetically paced, and yet it has these huge dialogue scenes in it. But I suppose really it's like the Moriarty thing. I was just answering this question earlier, but we were originally going to sort of tease him and have him arrive right at the end of episode 6. And really, as a consequence of the 90-minute thing, we just kind of brought everything up so that Phil Davis, the taxi driver, is actually part of the Moriarty plan right from the get-go, quicker, better. Yes. Have you asked a question? No.
You mentioned 9 episodes of Doctor Who plus Adventure in Space and Time, but I think, unless maybe I'm making this up, but I think you wrote another one, didn't you, for Series 4, which never happened?
I did. It's been wiped.
Oh, well, I just thought it'd be interesting if you could tell us a bit about it, elaborate on what happened in it,
Yes, I did. I wrote a second one for David Tennant, which wasn't done, which is called The Suicide Exhibition. I loved the research on this. It was set in the British Museum during the First World War, and then the second draft was the Second World War. There was going to be a third draft about the Third World War, but I never got that one. Set in 2018. It came about, it's a slightly convoluted thing. I've always wanted to do a Doctor Who set in Ireland, because there's never been a Doctor Who set in Ireland, which seems strange. I mean, it'd be filmed in Cardiff, but it's strange. And I love those bog people. Not physically, when they find those flattened Iron Age bodies in peat bogs, I think they're so creepy, and they're completely brilliantly preserved, but two-dimensional. I thought that'd be a rather good monster. That's how it started, and then there is one in the British Museum whose nickname is Pete Marsh, and if you look carefully, you can actually see right through his arsehole, through the top of his head, because he's totally 2D. That wasn't my pitch. Anyway, and then I found this other brilliant thing about the British Museum, that during both World Wars, they put most of the collection into storage in mines, in salt mines and things, out of the way. But what they did, so that people had somewhere to go, it was a massive thing, especially during World War II, about keeping people's cultural life going. Lunchtime concerts by Myra Hess and things became hugely popular because people wanted to feel they were fighting for something, and they were starved of culture. So the British Museum had this thing called the Suicide Exhibition, which was, they filled the museum with things that they had lots of, basically things they could afford to lose. I thought that was a marvellous idea. And so they've got 350,000 Iron Age pots. They put lots of them out. And indeed, they were destroyed because the museum was hit several times. And then there is an adventure in there. But I can't tell you about that in case I use it.
Right, we've got time for one or two more questions.
Yes. Oh no, you've asked the question before.
Let's go to the chap at the back. His
Ask me
hand's
later.
been
Ask
up
me later.
for every single time. That one there.
You?
The one with the white. No, there, but like towards the fire exit. 2 o'clock.
I wish I'd gone to Oxford. It's lovely.
Hi.
It's not always
so
as nice.
Obviously, the first season of Sherlock was very successful, and naturally that leads on to having a bit more money for the second and third season. And I was wondering if having that much more money changes your writing process any way, or do you just not think about that at all?
That's not true, I'm afraid. The abiding rule of television is that they try and give you the same amount of money, and then people become more expensive. We did get a bit more because of the international success and everything, but it doesn't grow exponentially. It really doesn't. And actually, I mean, nobody's got insanely greedy, although obviously they could. But you end up having to make the show for sort of the same amount of money under different circumstances. I mean, no, we never suddenly thought, oh, let's go and shoot the whole thing in California. I wish we had. Or anything like that. No, I mean, that's actually something that it's worth stressing about the way that things work. It's, you know, if you have a big hit, they come back to you with half the budget and say, why can't you make it for that? So it becomes like an ongoing battle to essentially keep things the same as they were. Yes. Sweatshirt man.
Is that different to film then? I imagine film, if you have a really successful one, then if you do the next sequel, you get a bigger budget. Or
My experience of film is much more limited, but I think it's probably very similar. I mean, I think unless you can, they did something like Lord of the Rings. They actually reshot loads of stuff after the first one came out because it was so huge. Yes, sir.
Sorry. Moving on to something more personal, what would you say is the weirdest thing about you?
Oh, God. My nose. Weirdest thing about it? I don't know. God, that's an interesting question. I can't tell you. Ray Bradbury said, I have the heart of a little boy. It's in a jar on my desk. Ooh, I don't know. Weird. I'm getting increasingly sentimental and emotional as I get older. I cry at everything, and I am genuinely terrified about the state of the world. This is not answer your question, but I can't think of anything weird. I think I'm all right. I'm genuinely terrified about the state of the world, and I'm worried sometimes I come across like some sort of prophet of doom. But I'm really frightened. I keep reading these things saying, you know, history is going to judge Trump very harshly. I'm just thinking, if there is a fucking history, I mean, really, it could. I think he's absolutely the Antichrist. It's terrifying. Oh, yes. You can survive a bad presidency, a bad government, but that man is genuinely dangerous, and the people around him are terrifyingly dangerous. And I don't know. I just feel like we're sort of stumbling into a very familiar scenario. There are rays of light across Europe where things aren't going. It's not like a great big steamroller, but everything about the international situation feels so horrifically like the 30s, and we know how that turned out.
Great. Well, on that clever plotting. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. But thank you so much for taking a day out of your busy schedule.